All right. Yes, we are missing a lot of people today. It's just sad that we are starting a new series today. Revelation. Why Revelation? Well, clearly it's not working here. This is what happens when you live in desperation, right? Because we're living in it? Okay, you think? Why Revelation? One of the reasons that I decided to do Revelation is because I hear that all the time. It's like I hear people saying like the end is coming. Jesus is coming. Like we are in end times. Like look at what's happening around us. Like the end of the world is absolutely taking place right now. Just read Revelations and you'll understand. Like all of these, what? The eighth day. The eighth day from LA Bible class, yes. Yes, there's a lot of people that are saying like it is, man, it's that time. And so I thought, maybe I should teach on this, which is a first because I've never, in the 18 years of being here, I've never taught on Revelation. Just like on Ephesians, I don't think we've ever taught on an entire book of Paul. So this is another first that we'll be teaching here. And as I wanted to, it is hard to understand. We're going to talk about why it's hard to understand. Because a lot of people will say, oh, Paul's easy to understand. And I'll say it all the time, right? Paul's not easy to understand. He talks in ways and sprinkles passages all over this. And if you don't know that he's doing that, you'll miss everything that he's saying. Yes, and he created new words. Yes. And we're going to find in this letter right here, it's even worse than you think, Lindley. To say that anybody can read Revelation and say, oh, I totally understand what's going on here, right? There's a partial way to understand some of the things that were going on, which is what I'm going to try to bring to light. But even with all of that, there's still so much that's like, I don't get it. Yeah. Yes. Well, what is Revelation? What is Revelation? What Revelation is not? That's what we're going to talk about today. What is it and what is it not? And so we're going to spend probably just 3 verses today. But I have to set the stage for what it is. Revelation comes from the Greek word apocalypsis. Right? When you think of apocalypsis, you think of what? Apocalypse. What do you think of when you think of an apocalypse? Zombies, the end of the world, The Walking Dead, what else? Total annihilation. Global nuclear war, right? Apocalypse. Apocalypse comes from the Hebrew word higalut, which both of these words mean just to uncover, to unveil. Right? So this word just means to unveil, to uncover something that was hidden, which is so different than the end of the world, right? This word has taken on a new meaning, when all in reality it just means I'm unveiling something new to you that you have not been able to see or probably will not be able to see, but I'm unveiling it just for you. That is the word revelation. So that obviously, right off the bat, Lily, it should change the way we think of this book just a little bit. Another thing that Revelation is that, man, this is a very, very, very Jewish book. Extremely Jewish. Just in the first few chapters I was looking at it, every sentence is a remez or an allusion to a previous text. It's going back to Ezekiel, it's going back to Jeremiah, it's going back to Isaiah. It's all of these texts. And not only that, you find in here every other sentence a word that's slipped in like shofar or sukkah or white robes, clothing. What do those all have to do with? A little bit deeper. What do you think of when you think of shofar, white clothes, or sacrifices? And keep coming. What did we just celebrate for 3 weeks? The high holidays, right? So there's allusions to all the high holidays that are in here, which means what? You should know these high holidays if you want to understand what he's talking about in this one sentence. How many people in Christendom know anything about the high holidays? Then if you don't know anything about the high holidays, how do you know what he's talking about? Right? So there's all of these allusions to, and then as you said, the temple. How many of us know everything about the temple service and how the temple operates and how you sacrifice the sacrifices and who does what and what's behind the Holy of Holies and what room is in this? All of that is in this text, assuming that you know this. Nobody in here or anywhere pretty much outside of this culture has any clue about this. So this is what he's talking about. All of these allusions, just in the first 3 chapters. And we're going to try to understand it, yes. Because here's the thing, that you have But you guys have a little bit of a better, because we celebrate these every year. So you don't have to fully grasp this, but we're just going to get a glimpse of some of this stuff. And I'm going to highlight the stuff that's important and skip over some of the stuff that we can skip past. Okay? Because it is a dream. And one of the things that we're going to find is that there's prophecies. Some of these prophecies are in the future. Some of these prophecies are for that present time. And some of the prophecies were in the past, which you're like, wait, why are these prophecies in the past? Because we're unveiling something that maybe you didn't see that happened in the past, or why something happened. Don't we have that in our own life? Something happens to us, and then years later we look back and we're like, oh, that's why that happened. I'm just giving you a reference, though. Yes. Mm-hmm. But even though it's not a prophecy, it's still not something that's unveiled to you, right? Yes. And so in this letter, there's going to be things that are revealed that you didn't understand in the past, to the present, and into the future. Which is why Revelation is probably the most read book and the least understood book in all of the Bible. It is. What? That's what I hear, yes. Well, at least for understanding, it's the most read and least understood. All right, so what the book is not as well, this book is not written for the 21st century person. It's not written to us. It's not written to us. It's not written for us. It's not a crystal ball or a roadmap of how to get to the future destination for end times. It's not, it's not left behind point 1, right? It is not even a literal example of what to understand or a literal narrative, nor is it an allegory. It's not an allegory of like, well, this must mean this then. He said red cow, or he said, what was the other one? You said it just a few days ago. The eagle and the bear. Oh, there's a bear in here. So he must be talking about Russia fighting the United States in a thermoglobal nuclear war. What? That was a real thing in the 80s. When we grew up, I don't remember. Yeah. That was a real thing. People believe that because they look at this Bible or this letter with allegory. This is such a Jewish book that even the early church, they banned this book. Because the early church didn't believe that there would be a messianic kingdom on earth with a Jewish king. And what does this letter talk a lot about? This Jewish king coming back and ruling on the earth. And like, well, that can't be true. So they banned it for a couple hundred years. Revelation is not addressed to us, but it is specifically addressed to 7 communities. And just like Paul, my hope is over the next few weeks, we're going to look at this letter just like we looked at Ephesians. How did they hear it? How did they understand what he was saying? And how did they apply Paul's words to them? Okay, well, let's look at these 7 assemblies, these 7 communities. And what did God give to Yeshua, to give to John, to give to these communities? And how did they respond? So, the hard thing, back to your point, Lindley, is this is what falls into the category of what's called Jewish apocalyptic writing. Apocryphal writing, like books like Enoch, third Baruch Jubilees. These are books that we don't study. And Walt keeps saying, like, we need to teach on Enoch. And he's right, because if we teach on Enoch, we'll actually understand Matthew better. Because the references that Yeshua uses about the Son of Man, they don't come from Daniel, they come from Enoch. And so probably we're going to come to Enoch, hopefully here in the near future. We'll start teaching on that. But it's a book that, how many of you guys have read Enoch? Right? Maybe have parts of it, right? But it's a must. Because who read Enoch in the first century? Almost all Jews. If you were a Jew, you had Enoch read. If you remember in the 90s, was it the 90s? You young, older guys, you guys remember the book Left Behind? Like, who didn't read Left Behind in the 90s, right? If you went to church, right, you had to read this book, right? That's in the Jewish community, that's Enoch. Like, you're looking at this book, everybody's learning and listening to Enoch being read to them over and over and over. So these are letters that in the first century, they would have understood this language, which is so foreign to us. They also should be known as understood, well, like I said about the gospel and so forth, but Jewish mysticism, Don was here, right? He would tell you, oh, mysticism. He loves to talk about mysticism, right? This letter is mysticism. It is Jewish apocalyptic mysticism. It is like being caught up into the heavenlies and sharing this mystical experience that I'm going to tell you. How many of you guys have had that before? Right? It's very, very rare. It's something that doesn't happen. And when it comes to visions and dreams, this is a dream that John has been given. How many of you guys wake up in the middle of the night or in the morning and like, oh my God, I had the craziest dream? Well, is it? Is it God telling you something? Or is it just this, weird off the wall? Like, have you ever had a dream that just stayed with you all day? And like, what does this mean? This has got to have meaning because I can't stop thinking about this. There's something about this dream. Ta-da! Here's Revelation. A dream. Right? And so it is dreams are hard to understand, but dreams are extremely hard to understand, especially when you're reading someone else's dream from 2,000 years ago, who comes from a different country and has a different paradigm and a different understanding of religion than we do. Which is why in 18 years I haven't taught on this book. Because it is difficult. So, you're asking probably the same question. Okay, Matt, so why are we teaching this book then? Why are we going in this direction? And like I said, one, it's to distill, in my mind, I think, the fear that people are putting out there. Read Revelation. It's the end times. All right, let's dig into Revelation and see, does it really say that? And two, because even though this is mystical and written to someone else, like I said, just like Paul's letters, we can actually still learn from what they heard and how they applied it. Because maybe they didn't apply it that way. Maybe we can learn from their mistakes. I learned when I was in the financial business, my boss told me that there's three types of people. He said, there's dumb people. People who make mistakes, and then they keep making the same mistakes over and over. He said, and there's smart people. People who make mistakes, and then they learn from their mistakes. And then he said, there's wise people. He said, wise people are people who learn from other people's mistakes. And so maybe we can look at Revelation, and we can look at these 7 assemblies, and we can say, what can we learn from what they did? What can we learn from what God was charging them? Because he said, in these letters, you'll see, hey, you're doing this well, and this, you suck. Right? And I'm kind of pissed at you for this. All right, well, let's learn from what they were doing good, and let's learn from what they were doing bad, and maybe we can apply that in wisdom to our life. So, Revelation 1, 1 through 3. Who can read it for me? John, you got me? Look, you got your glasses and a light, man. You look like me over there.
This is a revelation from Jesus Christ. We found it and showed the service, the events that must soon take place. the word of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ. God blesses the one who reads the word of his prophecy to the church, and he blesses all who listen to his messages and obey what is said. He is honored for the time being.
Time is here. Okay. So, right off the bat, we should see two things. What's the time frame of this urgent message? What is God saying to John about the time of this message? When are these things about to take place? Near. The time is near. What he said, you have to share this with the servants. It has to take place with speed. Why would I need to take it with speed? Because the time, this is going to happen quickly. What I'm about to share with you, these things are coming quick, so don't wait. So the first 3 verses, when they tell us what? Yes, then. Right? It's not for us today. It's not as future chart like, hey, at the end of the world, the time is near. Right? God is saying. It's coming quickly. So get this word out because it's going to happen. So instantly, this becomes a historical document that we can look into. Not necessarily a future document of the end of the world. Make sense? Okay, right off the bat, it tells us this. This is what's going to happen. And so, to talk about that, we have to give a little bit of context. There's some really crazy stuff that's happening in this time frame that we can look at and learn from, but also apply. First thing is, when was this letter written? Do we know? Between the 90 and 95-ish. Let's say 95-ish in that time frame, right? So 95, the destruction of the temple took place when? 70. So 25 years earlier, the end of the world for people that lived in Jerusalem happened already, right? It was a complete destruction. Next slide. This idea that, oh, darn, I can't see it. Some really good pictures here. The destruction was horrific. Then you get to, in 70 AD, this destruction took place. Nero, remember Nero when we were talking about Ephesians? Nero was the emperor who put Peter and Paul to death, right? Killed them both. Like, he was crazy, this guy. He was, for a lot of people, they were believing him to be the Antichrist because he was so against anybody that believed in this Jewish king, this Jewish Messiah, that he was just killing people. He was crazy. And in 68, he dies, which begins the rule of the 4 emperors. In 1 year, there was 4 Caesars, which as we dig into Revelations, you're going to see these 4s over and over. You're going to see symbolism, 7s, 3s, 4s. They're going to be everywhere throughout this book. But in this time frame, you have the 4 emperors that took over. And in 1 year, at the end of 69, this general named Vespasian was sent to Jerusalem to seize Jerusalem and destroy it. And before he gets there, he starts going through small towns and small towns. And he gets to this one small town that these rebels are fighting, and they're just putting up this huge fight. And it lasts for 47 days, these guys, this small group of rebels fighting the Romans. And they put up this fight for 47 days. And they get to the end, and the people of the town say, we're not going to surrender. I'm not going to allow my wife, my children, or me become slaves. So let's kill ourselves. Let's however we're going to do it, let's commit mass suicide because we're not going to be slaves. And so we're going to draw straws. And one of the generals that's there says, no, we should just surrender. And everybody's against it. Like, no. And so, oddly enough, they draw straws. And who gets the longest straw that is the last person to commit suicide? The general who said, we should just surrender. Oddly enough. You know who that general was? A guy named Josephus. Anybody heard that name before? Right? The historian that we get all this information from. Josephus just happens to be the last guy who's supposed to commit suicide. I'll be the last one, guys. And what does he do? I changed my mind. I'm giving up. Right? So he walks out and he goes to Vespasian. He says, I'm the last person to survive. Everybody else is dead. I'm the general. But I have a revelation for you. Maybe he says this because you think it'll spare his life. Maybe he doesn't want to be a slave. I don't know. But he goes to the general. He says, God has told me, he's revealed to me that you will become the emperor of Rome. And then it's like, okay, this is crazy. We live in a crazy time. We've already had 3 Caesars, like, in the past year. That's like having 3 presidents in 1 year. Like, one after the other, like, people dying, people killed. Like, it's crazy. And then somebody tells you, you're going to be the next president. God told me. You're like, okay, I don't know what to do with this. I'm going to keep you near me. You're under guard. We're going to Jerusalem. So they go to Jerusalem. They siege Jerusalem for months, just constant. The Sadducees, who were in control of the temple, they've all been murdered by who? The Zealots. The Zealots have now taken control of the entire temple, the food supply. They're threatening everybody. If you don't fight, we're going to destroy all of our food because we're not surrendering. You're going to fight or you're going to die. The Pharisees, they're like, dude, we don't want to have a war with Rome. Let's just surrender. But they're like, we'll kill you just like we killed the Sadducees. So what do? So there's this rabbi. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that was his name, comes up with his plan. I'm going to fake my death. You're going to carry me out to the general. I have a message for him, and hopefully he can save us Pharisees and get us out of here before we just all die. So he fakes his death. They put a dead animal behind him so he just reeks of like death, right? And so they're like carrying him out. The guards are like, is he dead? Oh, he stinks. Like, get him out of here. And so he has this procession. They walks him out to the graves and then drops him in front of the generals that are there, just like, okay, you're going to bury this guy. Go ahead. And he pops up out of the what is it, the box? What's it called? Coffin. Yeah, jumps up out of the coffin. Like, what the heck? He's like, General Vespasian, I have a message from God from you. Like, what? Like, this is 2 messages from God now within months. He comes to him, he says, I have a message from God. He has revealed it to me that you are going to be the next emperor of Rome. Like, you gotta be kidding me. This is 2 people now. Within the hour, riders from Rome show up and they say, the emperor has been killed. There's a battle. Everybody agrees. You are now to take over as Caesar of Rome. Now, immediately. So he turns back to Yochanan ben Zakkai and he says, take your people, go wherever you want. You want to go to Yavna? Okay, fine. He sends all of these people away to Yavna. He saved all of the Pharisees, which has now today become modern-day Judaism because of that act. Crazy, right? All of these crazy things are happening. All of these revelations have been taking place. Vespasian goes to Rome. He becomes Caesar. He dies after a while. He gives it to Titus, his son, Titus was the one who actually destroyed Jerusalem after he left. And Titus, after he destroyed Jerusalem, went up to the Temple Mount and went into the Holy of Holies and took his concubine or whatever and had sex on the Holy of Holies, which is called, many people at that time, the desecration of desolation, actually from Daniel. Like all these prophecies coming true, like one after the other. So crazy, crazy stuff. Titus then becomes Caesar and he dies, and the youngest son, Domitian becomes Caesar, which is the time frame of this letter right here, Domitian. Domitian is a very, very, very bad dude. Very bad dude. Today, we are so worried about politics and who's going to be the president, and who's going to be this, and what's going to happen. And on one hand, we all have a right and a necessity to vote. That is your responsibility. You haven't voted yet, go do it. You have a community, a societal responsibility, as well as a kingdom responsibility. You have that responsibility to go act. But on the other hand, what we are going through today doesn't even compare to what the people in this letter were having to go through with Domitian. The politics of that day were beyond horrible. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were willing to do the same thing. Uh-huh. Correct. Mm-hmm. Some people will fight to the very, very end. Yeah. rather than surrendering. Jewish perspective, right? It's like a slinky. It repeats just a little bit different every time. The politics of that day were, if you were a Jew or a Gentile who believed in this Messiah, this Jewish Messiah who was the king of the Jews, if you believed this person, and you followed this person, if depending on who you were, you might get thrown in jail. You might get banned to an island if you were like part of like the royal family who believed in this Jewish Messiah, which there were. But worse, most often you were beheaded. You were taken to the Circus Maximus and thrown to the wild animals so everybody would cheer and watch you be torn to bits. You were crucified, which was an awful, awful way to die as well. You basically suffocate in your own blood in your lungs. And then for some people, which they outlawed about 100 years later, they would boil oil in this huge vat, and then they would take your feet and they would hang you upside down, and they would drop you into boiling oil so your skin would just melt off completely. This is where I wasn't going to get, that's a lot of history into that. This is where you see one of the first separations between Judaism and Christianity, is at this time frame. Because the Jews were like, hey, we don't follow that guy. You're lumping us all in together, and we all meet together in the same synagogues, and we all pray together, we all do the same thing, but we don't believe in that guy. So this is one of the first times in history, Walt, where they start to see this shift. They start to be a split, because they're like, don't put us to death for him. Like, we follow God, but not that Messiah, right? And so this is the first time in history where you see people starting to separate between this. Now it's becoming more of a Gentile Christian religion as opposed to still being completely Jewish. It was awful. I mean, we think, inflation, economy, we're paying $3 for gas. The politics is horrible. There's nothing compared to this. And this is the Roman Empire. So it doesn't matter whether you live in Italy or in Jordan or Egypt. This is your lot right here. You are under attack because of what you believe and which God you follow.
They sort of, like when you say passage and repeat stuff, so like now, if you speak out of what you believe, they don't kill you now, they're just angry.
Yeah. It is different. Correct. And some people they have put in jail, depending on if you pray too close to certain buildings that they hold up as shrines, like you could be thrown in jail for that. Yeah. So what do we want to get from this? One, I want everybody to know that even though this document is mystical, it doesn't mean that we all have to become mystics. That's not the point of this. We're not all going to get these dreams and these visions, and if we don't, we're lesser than. Like, that's not the point of this. There are a few people who are mystics that this is what they enjoy and they go deep into these things. But it's not for everybody. Not everybody's going to experience that, but every one of you in this room has an opportunity to experience the living God in other ways. In one way or another, you have an opportunity to maybe hear that still small voice whispering to you. It might be, maybe it's a stranger that comes up to you and says something to you that is just completely odd, that you've never met before, and then you walk away and you're like, that's what I'm supposed to do. Or maybe a door opens up that should not have opened up, but now you walk through it because it's there. Maybe you are driving down the road and God says something to you in this still small voice, do this, turn right now. Call this person now. Each and every one of us has this opportunity to do this. The question that I have is that to encounter God in these ways, are you paying attention? Are you listening when you hear that? Are you paying attention when that stranger says something to you? Are you noticing that the door that you have never been able to go through is now open? Are you paying attention? Are you looking? Are you listening? I have three. Oh man, the black did not come good on this. I need three people to put all these verses. Roman, can you look up Matthew 24, 34 through 35? 24, 34, 35. Can you do Deuteronomy 11, 18 and 19? And I need somebody over here to do Matthew 15, 18, just 18. Roman, when you're ready, read Matthew 24, 34, and 35. So the context of this is Yeshua prophesying about the destruction of the temple that's about to come. And he finishes this prophecy with this. 24, verses 34 through 35. Yeah.
Truly I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things are happened. Let it already pass away, so one will be better than so.
So the prophecy is, this generation will see the destruction of this place. But even though these things will pass away, what will not pass away? What did it say?
Let it already pass away, and my word will not pass away.
But these words will not pass away. What does Deuteronomy say?
You shall therefore lay up the word of God in your heart and in your soul. You shall write them as a sign of you. They shall be harmless to your eyes. You shall teach them to your children all the land that you walk by the way. When you learn them,
You know what's interesting? A leadership principle that I learned about a couple of years ago. A guy was talking about how to read something and to remember it. And is that a problem for some people? It's always been a problem for me. How do I read it and remember it? Like, that's really hard. And one of the leadership principles he's telling me is like, look, the best way to read something and remember it and understand it is to teach it. If you have to teach these words, all of a sudden your brain switches gears and you start looking at it and you memorize it or you figure it out because you know, like, I have to share it with you. So I need to be able to share it in a way that I know it and understand it. So now I'm going to read this over and over and over until I know it so well that I can teach it to you. Why does God, and that's not the first place, he starts in Deuteronomy 6, why does God over and over tell us, read these words and teach these to your children? Why? So that you know them. We're not supposed to just come here and like, oh, what does Matt have to say today? Like, I guess maybe he'll share something from the Bible and we'll hear something we can leave. No, it's your job to know these words because the heaven and earth will pass away, but these words will not. And you will be judged. You will be asked, do you know these? Are you living? I mean, we talk about it all the time. Are you living these words out? Well, how do you live these words out if you don't know what they say? Matthew 15, 18? Who had that?
But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this defiles the person.
How do we live? What words do we speak? What are the thoughts that we have? Where does that come from? It says the heart. What does Deuteronomy say? Put these words where? On your heart. All of these are connected. Heaven and earth will pass away, but these words won't. Where are these words supposed to reside? Inside of me. Because when they're inside of me, they are coming out of me in my words, my thoughts, my actions. But if those words are not in my heart, what comes out? Everything that the world tells me I'm supposed to think, believe, and do. These words tell us not only how we're supposed to live, but how we're supposed to think about ourselves, how we're supposed to think about others, how we're supposed to think about God. And if anything that I can share in this whole letter is that the most important thing that we get out of this is that this letter is hopefully something that draws us to know God more. That's it. It's not about fancy charts. It's not about anything like we got to do this and this 3-point plan and this 12-point, PowerPoint. What this letter is drawing us to know God more. There is an unveiling, there's something secret, but the secretness to that is nothing if I don't draw near to God first. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't, in my opinion, I don't think the end is nigh. I don't think the end is near. I don't think Revelation is a chart for the end times. I don't think that we are in the same place that they were in 95. But I do think that where we are today, in my opinion, things are going to get worse before they get better. If you study globally what's happening that I probably do too much of, no matter who the president is going to be, there are going to be hard times that are coming that are harder than what we think we have right now. And why I think this letter is important is because are we listening to the Spirit now? Are we open to the doors? Are we open to the words that the still small voice? Are we open to somebody coming and saying, hey, go this way? Are we open and paying attention to what God is doing and trying to say to us right here and right now? The way that we do that, first and foremost, is by putting these words on our hearts so that we can hear. So that our heart can be softened to hear something else, to see something else. We put these words on our heart to take the blinders off so that we can see a bigger global world than just what's right in front of us. The idea is to pursue God as we started this in the morning, with all of our heart, with all of our soul, and with all of our muchness. And I know people say, well, I'm too busy. I don't have time to read. Yes, I don't have time to read. Or, there's many excuses that we have. And so I put these up here. These are just two that I found really quick, but two that I trust really well. First Fruits of Zion. You can go to First Fruits of Zion, and you can listen to the daily Torah portion, which is Deuteronomy. Gives you something from the Torah, it gives you something from the prophets, and then it gives you something from the apostolic writings, the New Testament writings. You can listen and you can read along while it's playing, or you can just listen to it. Then if you have some time and you have some questions, there's commentary from a Jewish Messianic perspective. Or if you're in your car and you just want to listen, the Bible Gateway has a dramatized version, right? You can just pull up, I want to listen to Matthew right now. So you just Matthew 1, Matthew 2. And while you're driving, you can listen to a chapter of the Gospels or of Ezekiel or anything. BibleGateway.com. Trying to make it easy for you, right? Because a lot of us drive. Walt drives in the city, spends 30 minutes. What are you doing? Well, here you got this Matthew chapter 1. Look at that. It's 4 minutes long. I've been asking you for years now to just read one gospel a day. It takes 5 minutes. I was wrong. It takes 4. And now I'm saying you don't even have to read it. Just listen to it. Please. Dig in so that you can hear what God is trying to say to us. As we continue Revelation next week, and we'll see what God said to the 7 churches and how we can apply that today. So, let me pray. Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for Shabbat. We thank you for Sabbath. We thank you for the challenge of going through a 2,000-year-old dream. We pray that you can open our hearts and our minds so that in wisdom we can learn from what you taught them. We thank you for friends, family, community, ecclesia. We thank you for love. We praise your holy name. Amen.